tell me. And he says, sometimes there isn't a plan. Sometimes the guy's just an asshole. And I went, oh. He said, have you stopped to consider that possibility? There is no big plan. There's no big conspiracy. These guys are just selfish assholes and they're out for number one. Their job is not to make you happy or to be complicit in anything that you do. And I've always sort of carried that with me. To go back to our, cocktail party scenario where they say, hi Wojciech, what do you do? Yeah. You're gonna still give them a truthful answer, right? But what you really want to do is you want to say, I'm a street sweeper, but I'm not just any street sweeper. I am the best street sweeper in Edinburgh. I'm the happiest, most fulfilled guy you're going to meet. Right? That's really what you want to say. You don't say that though, because you're not an idiot and you don't want everybody else to think you've gone mad, right? But that's the difference, right? It's the inner monologue that you have with yourself and whatever. It doesn't mean a thing. Maybe I don't want to know what they would say, but I would like to think that I deliver a different classroom experience than that. I bounce about.
So hopefully your statistics might be higher.
For that reason, I'm running about the classroom like an idiot at the front of the room, and I'm daring them not to say anything. Don't come to my class and not say anything. So maybe I'm not the best person to ask. Also, I'm teaching a subject that's based on conversation, right?
Yeah,
I'm not standing at the front of the room saying X plus Y equals, whatever. Being the catalyst for change, whatever it is, the important part of it has been to listen. And I think that is the pinning philosophy. You have to continue to listen in life. I think there's a lot of people get to a certain stage in their life and they go, okay, I know enough. I'm closing my ears metaphorically to, you can't tell me that. I know this.
Are we ready?
We are ready.
Yeah?
Yeah.
We're ready. Hello and welcome to WS Podcast. Here we are with Alistair, my supervisor from uni, a gentleman that actually we met, 4 weeks ago?
Something like that, yeah.
To record a little promotional video for...
I like to think of it as a testimonial rather than a promotion. But yeah, and this was the deal, right? You said, would you come on my podcast? And I'm happy to be here. So it's a pleasure.
Yeah, no, a pleasure to have you here. And, in terms of the topics and stuff, what are we going to discuss? Maybe let's start with this. Very easy, really. Could you just give us a few words about yourself, whatever you want to start with, that will set up the stage for our exploration?
So I wear many hats, I think is the thing most people would tell you about me. I've never been just one thing. I'm a husband, a father, a teacher, a photographer. I'm a 54-year-old father of 2 beautiful girls and married to a beautiful woman. And I live in Scotland and I spend my time teaching marketing to mainly postgrad students at university. And I also run my own photographic business. Yeah.
And you're a videographer.
Well,
and you're a speaker.
I think that's the thing about life, right? I think you can choose anybody on the street and say, how many hats do you wear? And we all wear a number of different hats, right?
Even if we don't think about it, right? Because I don't think it is an interesting thing to ponder. What do you say when people ask you, who are you? I've had this discussion with my wife at some point in the past months about like when you meet people at a party and like, oh, hi, my name is and then there's the space to explore who you are. And people will say, their job title or whatever.
I think, Wojciech, we can probably talk about this single subject for the entire hour we have, because it's a subject that's very close to my heart. I wouldn't say it keeps me awake at night, but I remember telling a colleague 30 years ago that I wanted nothing more than to have a simple job, a simple existence, that I could meet someone in a social setting, a dinner party, in the bar, wherever, and say, or give them an answer to that question that was simple and easy to understand. I'm a teacher, I'm a electrician, I'm a painter and decorator, I'm a airline pilot. And they would go, okay, I know what that is. No more, no more conversation. Yeah. And it took me years to realize that, first of all, you have a number of different roles that you fulfill. You don't have that choice. You can't just say, I'm only going to be this and that's it. Because society, family life requires you to be different things to different people. You know, it's one of life's imponderables. I am a child to my parents. Yeah, I'm a parent to my children.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, when they were young and figuring stuff out, I think it's sometimes easy to forget that I was also figuring out how to be a dad, right? You know, it's one of those things. So it's inherent in life that you wear many hats.
Yeah.
But there's also a cultural phenomenon around that, and it's particularly prevalent in the UK.
Okay, elaborate.
The thing in the UK is you go to a party where you don't know many people. They'll say hi, and you'll say, hi, I'm Wojciech. And they will say, what do you do? That's the classic question in the UK. Hi, what do you do? But you only need to cross the channel and go into the continent, and the question's different. We share that in common with the US, but they're the two main cultures where your profession, your occupation defines you. and with that comes a whole load of judgment.
Yeah, I see.
You know.
That's really interesting. I'm just thinking what would people ask at a Polish party, funnily enough, because you know, I was thinking like,
well, you're the expert there.
Exactly, but now you got me dumbfounded, because I don't know, like, hi, my name is Wojciech, I'm a blah blah blah. I think usually in terms of like a social setting, at least the answer is often also, how do you relate to whoever is at the party or who's the host? Or maybe because I'm a partner to Julia and Julia is the one invited. Oh, I'm a boyfriend, husband of Julia.
But that's my point.
But the question, I don't remember what kind of question.
You don't walk through life defining yourself as Julia's husband.
Yeah, true.
Right?
Unless
it's a big. So you have so there's social, cultural, geographic influences on how you see yourself. And it's all about identity.
Yeah.
It's all about identity, and that I think that was probably one of my biggest awakenings in life was how you because it'd been something I'd been thinking about like forever, and there's social pressure as well. You know, you want to be
perceived as but so this is I think a problem that young people will sort of relate to. In our day and age, something like a career, the way that it was sold to at least me when I was sort of going through the motions of school, high school, uni, there are a limited number of occupations that still maintain this career path, whereas many people change their jobs so many times. So how can we be reliant on on recognizing ourselves as I'm a painter, I'm a writer, I'm whatever?
It's a great question, and
so it's an outdated question. What do you do?
Correct. But then what are the alternatives?
How are you? I don't know.
How are you? I'm well. I'm fine.
Yeah.
And that's a conversationally, that's a dead end.
Funnily enough, even more so because I found in Britain.
They don't want to know.
Yeah, it's just how are you is almost like hi.
Yes.
You know, it's
Correct.
not actually a question.
Exactly.
I often catch myself answering that question as if they ask, and the person's already like.
Yeah, they don't want to know. They don't want to know. And if you're going through anything that's even remotely difficult to talk about, that's a instant. Oh no, don't want to know.
Yeah, I see.
You know.
I see.
So that it's
a courtesy.
So yeah, correct. Well, it's a very shallow courtesy.
Yeah, no, it's more like that's what I was told to say.
Yeah.
So I say it.
99% of the time, the expected response, the only acceptable response is, "I'm fine. How are you?"
Yeah.
You know, in Britain, if we're feeling particularly open to conversation, we might expand that to making a comment about the weather.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, right. Or
how are
about
you?
the day, like.
How are you? I'm fine. Oh, you know, what about this rain though? And you know, it's like constant surprise. But I'm interested about the other thing you said about, because you know you're in your 20s, right?
Yeah.
So
wow, late.
late. Okay, I'm clinging to my early 50s, right? But there's the better part of 30 years between us, right?
Sure.
That's the point. And it's interesting for me to hear you say that you were still of an age where there were certain careers that you could expect to be doing that for life.
I mean, not necessarily that I'm expected. Rather, I think that myth has not been fully busted or at least acknowledged by whoever is around me. What I mean is like by now, and I've been in the workforce, whatever, for somewhere like 10, almost 11 years. I've had, 15, 16 jobs. This is not to say that, these jobs were changing dramatically my career, but there were times when I was in hospitality for a year, 2, 3, and then there were times when I was in creative writing, whatever, journalism job for 2, 3 years, and then now I'm in the financial sector, whatever. But what I mean is like, if I rely on that to define myself, then I could potentially in those years when I changed the job 2 or 3 times in that year, I'm like in a revolving door of every time you meet me at the party, I'm going to tell you something different. But I've had an argument about that, like discussion, this is the wrong word used, about that, like, I challenged myself, especially at uni, when people asked, what do you do? To talk about my hobbies rather than my job. This is not to say that the conversation was any more interesting than otherwise, but that's a way of maybe slightly, kind of curveballing this conversation. Because if you say, what do you do? And I say, I'm an auditor. Okay, that's it. That's basically
I've instantly put you in a
he's an autistic, boring guy.
Well,
number crunching.
But that's exactly my point, Wojciech. Because I know you're not.
No.
I know there's many layers to you. You're a very articulate and introspective guy that has no problem holding a conversation on a number of different. Inquisitive, I think I would probably describe you as, right? And that's my point. If I said, here's my friend Wojciech, he's an auditor, 90% of people are going to make an instant judgment, right? I want to tell you a story about actually one of my best friends on the planet. His uncle, and for people watching this that are of a certain age, they'll instantly think of a song when I describe him. He was a worker for the council.
Okay.
30 years, and he cleaned the streets. Right.
Okay.
He was part of the street cleaning team at the council.
The one with like a machine or with a trolley?
Yeah, I ended up in some of the big machines, yeah. But, was no stranger to a brush.
Yeah, of course.
And he was one of the most inspiring men I ever met. And yet, if you put him into that social circumstance that we were describing, there would be an instant, oh yeah, I know what you do. And from a socio-economic point of view, you're not very high up the ladder. Okay, that would be the judgment that people would make. They'd be wrong to make it, but that would be the judgment nevertheless. And he was such an inspiring guy because he talked about his job with so much passion that I found myself spellbound in his company. And he was so enthusiastic about it, even weeks, months before he retired. He was so passionate about doing a good job. And he would tell me stories about big events in the city where there had been tens of thousands of people attending. And they would turn out at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning when people had gone home. And his single mission was to return those streets to their pristine state, ready for the morning crew clocking on. And he was so proud of those times when he would be doing something like that. And the response from the morning shift that started work at, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, they would be like, there's no evidence of, 20,000 people just having had a concert or a New Year celebration or whatever it was, and they would be like, yeah, we did a good job, And
There's nothing for us to do.
And I just thought, my God, if you can do, and I think I can describe it as a humble job, right? It's a humble job, right? But if you can do that with such passion, then you really are standing on the shoulders of giants, right? You really are a fulfilled, happy person, and that's what I think that's what everybody should aspire to be. So it doesn't matter if you're a street sweeper. It doesn't matter if you're an airline pilot, right? So it's an outdated question and because it gets attached to identity, and it forms part of your self-identity over years and years of doing it. And he was the exception. It also reminds me of, I really like reading autobiographies, right? That's my, if I'm going to read a book, it's usually a book about someone's life.
Oh, wow, okay.
I just think people are the most interesting storytellers rather than fiction. I don't.
Sure. I see. Yeah.
So and I sometimes incorporate the quotes into my lectures, just if I found them particularly inspiring.
Of course.
And one of the ones that's most relevant to this subject is from Barack Obama.
Okay.
And Barack Obama famously said, why don't we just do excellent? Why don't we just bake in excellent as standard? And I always think of my friend's uncle as being a real embodiment, a real living example of that standard. Why don't we just do excellent? Everybody knows what excellent is, right? You know how to do a mediocre job. You know how to do your job to a standard that your employer's happy with. But it's a spectrum. You also know how to do a really shitty job, right? You'll never do that, but we all know people that just dial it in. And everybody knows what truly excellent looks like. And I think I wasn't there at the time Barack Obama said it. I just read about it afterwards, like everyone else, most people. But I think his point was this: if you're clocking in for a shift, you're there for the duration. Being excellent doesn't mean you have to sweat more. It doesn't mean you have to work harder. It just means that you're happier, you're more fulfilled, you're more satisfied, your customers, your stakeholders, your colleagues, everybody else around you is happier with that standard of excellence, right? So why don't we just do that?
I think there is, you just made me think of this idea that ultimately, if you're doing a shitty job or whatever you're doing, if you're unhappy with what you're doing, even if you don't admit that to others, you're still taking the toll on like a spiritual, energetical sense.
Oh, yeah.
If we're having a good conversation, you come out of that conversation knowing that it was a good conversation. Even if I pretend it was great and it was really bad, I still know it was bad. So from that perspective, even if you're cleaning the streets, if you're enjoying it and making the most of it, it might I would argue it might be healthier for yourself and your spirit to do so, other than trick yourself into pretending and essentially steal from yourself that opportunity to get satisfaction from it.
You're talking about acceptance.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, and that, I think that's a big part of this conversation. So identity, acceptance, these are all parts of your identity. And to go back to our cocktail party scenario where they say, "Hi Wojciech, what do you do?" Yeah, you're gonna still give them a truthful answer, right? But what you really want to do is you want to say, "I'm a street sweeper, but I'm not just any street sweeper. I am the best street sweeper in Edinburgh. I'm the happiest, most fulfilled guy you're going to meet." Right? That's really what you want to say. You don't say that though, because you're not an idiot and you don't want everybody else to think you've gone mad, right? But that's the difference, right? It's the inner monologue that you have with yourself, and whatever. It doesn't mean a thing, right? You're only telling them the surface layer, but everything else underneath. The next part of that though is when you're saying, "But I know how it feels. I know what that job feels to me," and I think that's the bit that people often fail to accept. How many times have you met someone that's unhappy in their job?
Oh yeah.
All the time, right?
I think maybe 5% of all the people I've met are like excited to tell me what they do, as a not as a pride, but as a something that they are really interested in. Because there is a difference, I can be like, I'm a lawyer, but if you hate being a lawyer, you're just proud of having the title, then that doesn't
there's a tax to pay on your energy, right?
No, but for the most part, majority I don't think would say like they are really, really happy.
So I would say that I probably spent, I could probably work it out, 20, if we round it up to a nice even number, maybe 20 years working in a conventional kind of Monday to Friday job. For 20 years. After I graduated with my first degree, I spent 20 years working for the man, as they say. And I would say that the last couple of years I really didn't enjoy it. So I stopped doing it.
Okay.
And it was only when that happened that I realized how many people just suck it up and do it. And they don't realize it's killing them slowly. And you can have the fanciest title in the world. You can go to a cocktail party every night and say, "I'm an airline pilot, I'm a jet ski instructor, I'm a, I don't know, whatever,
Whatever glamorous to you.
Yeah. But if you hate doing that, then what's the point? What is the point?
That's a good question. Let's park that for a second.
Okay.
Just to drive this point home, the one thing that I thought about when you said that they suck it up is I think it's because of fear that there is a potential that the change will be worse than where I am. The fear of change being, at least in their mind, so great that they perceive the sucking up, like just to withstand the challenge, as a lesser evil.
For sure, no argument there. I think that the key point is it's fear. And fear takes many shapes and sizes. It's all part of what is sometimes referred to as the pain body. Right? So, but it's familiar.
Yeah.
Right? It's familiar. I can do this because this is what I do. I just get up and I go to work and I suck it up. And I suck it up until there's nothing more to be sucked up. Then I go home and I self-medicate with
entertainment, dopamine essentially,
yeah,
of whatever shape or form.
And then I get some sleep and then I get up and do the whole crappy thing again, right? But I know how to do it.
Yeah.
It's familiar. But that pain will take the shape of anxiety, depression, fear, anger, doubt, any negative self-loathing, or you know, you might be taking it out on somebody, you might be making their lives miserable, but and it's because of this twisted sense of identity and all of those things that come with it, and this fear of change.
It's almost like you mixed up your main character role of being, you know, Wojciech, to your main character role of being the managing director of this, you know, branch.
Exactly. So the question I asked you a few minutes ago about how many people do you meet that hate their job, right? How many people do you know wear that cloak of, I'm the managing director of such and such, or I've got, you know, something else that they invest their identity in, and that's the compensating factor. That's why they're willing to get up every morning and suck it up, because they wear this cloak of identity, right?
But the question is, what came first, right? Was the cloak the thing that allowed you to forget who you were, or did you use the cloak to do so? You know what I mean?
That's almost impossible to answer, because I think a lot of people do it differently. I know people that have got this figured out from a much earlier age. I'm not saying I've got it figured out, right? I'm still learning, and I hope to continue to learn until I'm, you know, no longer a physical entity on this planet, right? And the reason for that is someone who's very close to me said to me a while back, don't aim for perfect, aim for excellent, but not perfect. Because the original meaning of the word perfect is complete. When something's perfect, it's over. There's no more reason to be doing it. If it's perfect, you stop, right? So it's about the journey, and it's about learning. I also just, this is a kind of a silly digression, but I also used to have this weird theory, right? Which is, if you consider all the lives that have been lived on planet Earth, right? I mean, there's 8 billion of us now, right?
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people lived and died up until this moment. So I don't know what the number is, but it's a big number, right? And it seems kind of wasteful that every new baby that's born has to figure out stuff. Do you know what I mean?
That we don't get like
a chip, like some sort of like, here's the sum total of human knowledge up until this point. Your job is now to contribute to that.
Yeah, or at least a manual, you know, like.
Well,
you know, so you don't get mixed up. With the cloak.
Yeah.
Right.
Correct. And I know it sounds silly, but I genuinely believe that this should be taught in schools.
Oh yeah.
Right. I think we should have a class in schools that is, I don't know what you would call it, but how to be a human being, right?
But don't you think that this is just putting my tinfoil hat on? Don't you think there are beneficiaries of keeping people in such a docile state?
Oh, right, okay. Yeah, I see the tinfoil hat now. Okay, yeah. I don't subscribe to the big conspiracy.
Okay.
And maybe that makes me a hopeful, naive, romantic guy, but the reason I don't subscribe to this is because of my friend Eddie. Okay, I need to tell you about Eddie.
Okay.
Sadly, Eddie's no longer with us, but he was originally my boss, but we formed a really close friendship over the years, and he was a funny guy, he was a wise guy. When I first met him, I thought he was like 20 years older than he actually was, because he just had
I see.
One of those, I'm convinced he'd been here before in another life, right? And then We got to know each other. We worked side by side on lots of exciting projects.
Was it the previous job, the one that you held for 20 years, or was it after that time?
That was in my 20-year phase of, when I was enjoying it, And he was one of the reasons I enjoyed it. And we used to talk for hours and hours about like things like this. You know, we had so many wonderful conversations together. And he, one day, we were talking about a particularly difficult colleague that we were trying to navigate our way around. We were doing a project, and this guy was just, just being difficult for, well, that's the point of the conversation actually. And I was saying to Eddie, I don't know what his motives are. I don't know why he's being this, difficult, but it's okay. I've thought of this and I'm going to go around it this way and this is what I'm going to do. And after a while I realized I was the only one talking and Eddie wasn't really contributing anything to the conversation, but I was just, it was almost like a wartime bunker, and I had the map in front of me and I'm moving the tanks around and I'm describing my strategy to Eddie. At this point, Eddie's just sort of leaning back in his chair and laughing. And I stopped talking and I said, okay, what is it? What's so funny? And he said, the thing I love about working with you so much is you're never far away from a conspiracy theory. And I said, really? He said, yeah, you always want to know the why, you want to know the motives, you want to know and he said, you know something? And I said, tell me. And he said, sometimes there isn't a plan. Sometimes the guy's just an asshole. And I went, oh. He said, have you stopped to consider that possibility? There is no big plan. There's no big conspiracy. These guys are just selfish assholes and they're out for number one. Their job is not to make you happy or to be complicit in anything that you do. And I've always sort of carried that with me. If I ever am, because it's not, even if.
Okay, so let me frame it this way. What I mean is, like, if there is a lack of certain key skills exploration in education, which I think there is, and of course public schooling and all that's fairly new. It's not something that was with humanity forever. For the major part, education was down to the parents to pass on the knowledge. Maybe it is simply an old system not catching up yet, but I see many holes, not only on this how to be human, but also how economy actually works for you, how to navigate your personal purse so you're not broke, how, there are different aspects there that I think at least we're having a blind spot for in education. And maybe it is simply because someone didn't pay attention to add it there. I don't know.
I think, when you start bringing the economy into it, it gets more complicated, right? And I think it's maybe slightly easier to address that with knowledge, with learning, and things, And sometimes the old-fashioned advice isn't.
It's just outdated.
Well, I was actually going to say sometimes the old-fashioned, most simple advice is going to be the thing that is the constant. It doesn't change. If I was having this conversation with a buddy of mine recently, and I had read something that for the last someone worked the maths out, but something like since 1952. All you had to do to become a millionaire was to put $100 a month
in S&P 500.
Yeah, and that's it. And I remember reading this initially like some sort of revelation and go, why didn't I do that? Why didn't I do that? I'd be a millionaire by now. Of course, I didn't have $100 when I was 18. To put away. If I had $100, I'd be spending it on food, clothes, beer.
No, but wait. But my point is, at which point have you started thinking about the whole even idea of saving and investing? It might vary across the families, but among my friends, this is a topic that I bore people to death with, and they are almost 30. And it's something that just people, there is no invitation. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, okay. So that's one component of it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think if you're nearly 30 and you haven't thought about it, then you're going to have some difficult times ahead.
Yeah.
I mean, I would go as far as to say that, you know, we can't make it a law, but you need to be saving. The thing that I'm a Gen Xer, right? And the thing that was drummed into me, as soon as I graduated, I started contributing to a pension fund out of fear. Because the only thing anybody told me about the pension was I wouldn't get one unless I saved for it myself. Now, the UK is doing a lot of things wrong right now, but one thing, touch wood, that is certain, for me at least, is that I will get some form of state pension. Fortunately, I don't have to rely on it.
Yeah.
But what happened in my life to get that advice that didn't happen in somebody else's? You're talking about friends of yours that are nearly 30 who are making no provision for their retirement?
That's my point. What happened in your life? Maybe it was a family, maybe it was some friend, colleague, whatever.
I don't know. That's the thing. I don't know.
Maybe,
I don't know.
Maybe your curiosity. For me, it was my curiosity. Like I met. There is a saying that the teacher will appear when the student is ready.
Yeah.
And for sure, for me, that's what happened. But a big part of it was I first had to get like, oh, something's wrong. You know, I'm not. I'm not where I want to be, and I started reevaluating what.
I think there's probably two important factors. There's the environmental factors. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they're beyond your control, but I think the other one is your own particular stage of life. Where, I mean, okay, I started preparing for my retirement at the age of 21. Okay, but I couldn't imagine what retirement looked like. I just put money blindly into a pot and said that's for my retirement. I don't know what that is, but someone told me it was really, really important, so we're putting money in there. And over the years we've put more or less in as circumstances allowed, right? But there's two things there. There's the knowledge and the action. And sometimes the action is just an action out of blind faith. I'm 55 on my next birthday. I'm starting to figure out what retirement's going to look like because some of my friends are now retired.
Yeah.
Right? But the old phrase, if you can see it, you can be it, applies here. It's one of the old-fashioned pieces of advice. I did something 33 years ago, to start a pension fund that I just did blindly. And how many other things do we do out of just blind compliance?
Yeah. For
the right or wrong, because of environmental factors that have told us that's what you need to do. Which brings me back to my point. There's I think a real need for schools to teach life skills, but it's knowing what point to teach them. And those lessons about self-identity and how to use your brain, how to use your mind, they're not taught.
I think this is a good moment to come back to the question you asked. You know, what's the point? Because
what do you think the point is?
In life?
Yeah.
Yeah. So from what I gathered so far, the point of existing, and I do believe that our soul has many lives, and every time it adventures into the physical world, it's for a purpose of some sort that the soul decided with a bunch of other souls to play out as a role, almost like a film, or whatever, a play. But I think at the very core of it, and I understand it, but I don't necessarily mean I fully comprehend it and embody it, is to learn how to love unconditionally and let go. Those are the two things that I found consistently, at least with my life. Maybe this is my soul's venture. But letting go is the one theme that happens to me again and again. And I'm currently in the process of having that happen to me on a few different levels in my life. And whether it's letting go of some things that you've had, or letting go of some identities, or letting go of some people that came and went, or letting go of some ideas for the future that you've had that are no longer gonna be there, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or letting go of the perspective that the world is as you think it is, because you realized it's not. That's a big one that blew my mind, like, recently.
Well, I mean, that's well, there's a lot there, right? And that last part, is that the I can't remember. I'm going to misquote someone now. Was it Newton that said the act of observation
changes
that which
subject.
changes that which is being observed. I can't remember if it was one of those preeminent.
You mean the Heisenberg principle?
It's Heisenberg principle, not Newton. Yeah, correct. Yeah, so that, I think that's a really important factor, and letting go is potentially going to change whatever you're letting go of.
Yeah.
Right. And I love the idea of the purpose being to love unconditionally. I'm sort of keep coming back to the theme of happiness. I think the point is happiness. I think the point is your job is to be happy.
Okay. To take care of your human.
I think
happy, unless you.
I think there's lots of levels to it. I mean, it sounds terribly trite and terribly kind of one-dimensional. I mean, if the thing that makes you happy is, you know, a truly evil hedonistic thing, then don't do that. Please don't pursue happiness. We want less murderers on the street, okay? So you know that it's not a hedonistic thing that I'm talking about. It's about a soulful, you know, happiness, and maybe the letting go part. So they're broadly consistent. I think our thoughts with each other.
Yeah.
So the happiness thing is linked to love unconditionally, and I think within the happiness thing is also to let go, because you can be happy by letting go of stuff, and it also harks back to my like little idea that we should be chipping all babies, right? Because the working it out part can lead to the happiness. Ultimately that's why I reversed that thought. I didn't actually want some sort of Star Trek version of the future where we all have, you know, renounced currency and there's no money, but there's also no famine, there's no hunger, and there's a knowledge-based economy. I think we're a long way from that, but I think that accepting that your job is to be happy, is to be content, is to be contributing to knowledge, is the thing that's missing. It's the thing. It's not taught in schools, and it's the reason that you see so many. I bet if we walked to that window right now and looked into the street, we'd see at least one person trudging up the pavement, eyes down, looking for all intents in the world like they didn't want to be there. And they don't have any agency, and who knows what their situation is, but they don't have any agency. They can't, for whatever reason, and I'm sure it's a legitimate reason to them, there's no reason why they can't change their situation. So,
on that point, you just made me think about like education and stuff, because so this is just a working theory.
Yeah.
I assume that there is a certain age up to which a child is happy by default, simply because it's constantly engaging with activities out of its own voluntary, whatever. And because it doesn't have yet to deal with the realities of the world outside of its sphere of influence, hopefully there is more happiness to be had there. And my worry about the education, at least through which I've been, and I'm not talking about uni and whatever. At that point, I'm an adult, so I'm more, in agency of my experience. This is not to say that people are, but
Yeah.
But the early stage of education, when suddenly this free-spirited person who is constantly curious about the world, and especially among men, we're very hyperactive at the time. You're suddenly being put in a classroom, made to sit and passively listen to someone tell you how things are. Not necessarily you're interested with it, and you have a peer pressure of acting like everyone else, otherwise you get punished. Isn't that leading us to like a sort of maybe a mix-up or a schizophrenia, maybe forgetting who I was, and by the time I finished my 12 years of mandatory public education,
Yeah.
I forgot how it was to be happy on my own accord. Now I associate happiness to my friends think I'm cool, or my father pat me on my back, or the employer
Wherever you get
likes
your
me.
validation from, you mean?
Yeah, like you're no longer
Yes.
in pursuit of happiness of your own accord. You're dancing to someone else's drum.
Yeah. So I think you've hit the nail on the head. I think you've described perfectly the reason why there is a conundrum over this, and it's the reason why we don't have a class in K-12 education to talk about this stuff. Because first of all, you don't want to be the guy that pops the bubble of happiness for children. You for a while there, I was listening to you and it was like, my God, yeah, that would be a terrible thing. You take this child that's happy playing with the ball and the stick, and they say, hey, kid, come here. Pretty soon, life's going to start to suck, right? And your job is just to suck it up. That's heartbreaking.
That's effectively what happens, though, right? I mean, that's my perspective on this.
Really?
Not necessarily someone actually tells me that, but because I get mixed up with where happiness is for me, and I start pursuing all these other things that someone suggested I do.
Okay, go back to the story where I told you about my 21-year-old self blindly trusting the advice to start contributing to a pension pot. Didn't know why I was doing it. Would occasionally look at my payslip and think I could put that money to better use right now. But it was the right thing to do. Okay? But I can't tell you the single day I decided to do that. I can't tell you who told me to do it. I just knew instinctively it was the right thing to do. But somebody must have, right? And the only reason I can't tell you is probably because of poor memory. I must have got that advice. My point is, why can't we find a way of delivering information about our wellness, our mental wellness and purpose and identity in the same way that we can talk about financial advice? I know it's not equitable. I know it's not an egalitarian system where everybody gets that same advice because the world's broken, right?
But it could be. I mean, you could have a class on whatever you want to call it, mental health, how to be human.
How to be human.
I like the title of it, like how to be human.
Well, I think we're just not evolved enough yet, right? So, of the 8 billion people that walk this planet, how many 10-year-olds can't add 1 + 1 and know the answer is 2?
I'm not sure.
I don't know the answer either, but I know it's not everyone.
Yeah.
But I'm assuming the majority have a basic level of reading, writing, and arithmetic, as they used to describe it, the 3 R's, right? But it's not perfect. There are many children that don't have a basic education. So, with that in mind, it's very ambitious for you and I to sit here right now and say, we should have a class for all 5-year-olds about how to be human.
Yeah,
If we
yeah.
can't even get that right, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I see.
I think, Star Trek ain't happening any time in the next 100 years.
In that sense, I've been discussing with now my wife, but we've discussed it before we got married even. I do believe and of course people are imperfect, so some people will simply not pass it on to their children because they've not had the curiosity or whatever to think about it themselves. But I do believe one should rely more on themselves to bring up your children well, rather than on the system, simply because the system takes on so long to catch up. What we're discussing here, it's such an easy fix for my children, to just chat with them about these things. It's much more difficult for me to make the UK government to introduce a policy and to introduce an effective teacher who's going to tell my kid in the future.
I couldn't agree more. It's not necessarily the job of the schools to have this lesson, right? It's ideally it starts with the parent, but if the parent doesn't know, I think you asked me earlier, what comes first? It's a sort of chicken and egg scenario, right? So we don't know how to get the engine running.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. And then you add into that the layer of social injustice and inadequacy, even at a parenting level, and the thing starts looking a lot harder to achieve.
Of course. Plus, if you're at work 9 to 5 every day, just how much influence do you have on your child past the time when they're spending 24/7 with you?
Correct.
It's almost like as if you're the guest to the child's life rather than the main character.
I visited the Anne Frank Museum a few years ago, and we signed up for the educational seminar part where you don't just walk around the house and look at the attic. There's a seminar and some stuff, and we watched a film with Otto Frank, her father, who read her diary after she died. And for a long time, I think he said for a long time he hadn't read it. And someone in the film asked him how he felt afterwards, and he said, I wish I hadn't read it, because it was like a window into into the soul of someone I didn't know. And that's your point, I think, is you get so little time with your child. The heartbreaking statistic is that by the time your child is 12, you've spent 75% of all the time you'll ever have with them. And
I know what you're referring to. I remember they made a little animated documentary about it as well. As part of a TED Talk or whatever.
Yeah, and it's heartbreaking, especially. I mean, I don't want to, make the case that I'm different from anyone else, but I have a fantastic relationship with my daughters, and I miss them. But equally, I'm proud of the life that they're making for themselves, and I want them to do it independently and courageously, and they have to do that away from me to succeed. But it's heartbreaking to know that the majority of the time I have with them is behind me. And without wishing to be maudlin about it, that's kind of the point we're making here, which is by the age of 12, most children have had the majority of time they'll have with parents. So there has to be another mechanism to learn how to be a human being that you need some guidance on. I think it's more about our willingness to have conversations like these. I don't know many people that would willingly have a conversation like this.
This seems to be a theme of my conversations over the past year and a half with people.
There must be the majority of people in your life are not people that would be willing to get up on a Saturday morning and sit down and have a meaningful conversation about existence.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think, I think that's the problem. There are people that have worked it out. I don't consider myself to be someone that has worked it out, and I think about it a lot.
But that's the thing, right? I feel that unless for your own entertainment, really, you do your own working out, you're not gonna enjoy such a conversation, because you will feel defensive and ignorant, and none of us wants to feel ignorant and defensive.
And also, if you're doing it in a classroom environment, you've got all those other things that you were talking about, like social acceptance and validation, and I just want to be viewed by my peer group as cool or whatever.
Look, you teach at uni, right?
Yeah.
What percentage of people talks in class after you ask a question? How many people raise their hand and actually talk?
Generally speaking, about 20%.
That's still higher than I expected. I'm still attending some classes. Now I'm doing ICAS qualification.
Okay.
We're adults. We're almost 30. No one talks. The teacher asks, I say a word, there is one guy on the other side of the class, and I'm no special, it's just too awkward for me not to say anything, because the teacher is asking, and she's asking and we all know, and everyone's just quiet.
Yeah, they're scared of being wrong. They're scared of saying something...
But judgment?
Yeah, they're scared of judgment. I mean, I think I'm at the same time interested to know what my students would say, and also at the same time maybe I don't want to know what they would say, but I would like to think that I deliver a different classroom experience than that. I bounce about.
So hopefully your statistics might be higher.
For that reason, I'm running about the classroom like an idiot at the front of the room, and I'm daring them not to say anything. Don't come to my class and not say anything. So maybe I'm not the best person to ask. Also, I'm teaching a subject that's based on conversation, right?
Yeah,
we need. I'm not standing at the front of the room saying X plus Y equals, whatever. This has to be about what you think. Don't study this subject if you don't have an opinion, because it's based on emotions and feelings. So maybe I'm the wrong guy to ask that question. But what I will say is the majority of and I teach mostly postgrad. So I'm talking about students in their mid-20s with a few years maybe of real life experience between their first degree and deciding to do another. So also that contributes. They have opinions.
Yeah.
But this is the bit that kills me, is I watch them crumble at the end of the semester into a pit of despair and self-doubt, and it's very, very common to watch their confidence challenge them at the point of assessment. I see so many students in a tearful state because somehow they think they're going to fail. It's this fear of failure. And that's the start of it. That's the question we asked right at the very beginning. Why did people not take agency? Why? Now, don't get me wrong. The students I teach are brilliant, right? I mean, maybe it's a feature of getting older, I don't know, but every new class that comes in, I just think, God, you guys are just superhumans. And I would be terrified if I would have met you all when I was your age, because you just, I don't know, maybe my cohort, back in the day, maybe we were just as impressive, but there's all this youth and energy and knowledge and confidence at the start of the year, and they're smashing it, right? These are postgrads, and they're just, generally speaking, really impressive human beings. And then over the course of the year, the pressure builds and the pressure builds, and then they're doing their dissertations and they're doing their final year projects, and it's very common. It's very common to watch them do that. So what I always do, I'm in a privileged situation. At the end of every semester, for the last half hour of my last lesson with them, I get them together and I say, right, here's some stuff. Here's my 5 lessons, my 5 takeaways. And I've been doing it a few years now. So this is my version of how to be a human being.
Yeah.
So I'm always trying to single-handedly fix the problem, but it's one class at a time. And I go through my 5 lessons with them. And every year I do it, I have a moment of doubt. And I think to myself, really putting myself out here. And they didn't pay their tuition fees to come and listen to an old guy with white hair and a beard talking about the 5 things he learned. But I know it's the last time I'm going to see them. And many of them at least. And I know that the next few weeks of their lives are going to be dominated by assessment, whether it's an exam, a piece of coursework, a dissertation, and they're all going to have moments of self-doubt. And I see them, and I know that it works because some of them come to me and say, I'm struggling. And I say, okay, well. And the first thing I ask them is, I say, why do you think you're going to fail? What's changed? And they look at me and say, what do you mean what's changed? I said, because you've been succeeding up until this point. You've enrolled in a postgraduate course. You know we don't just let anyone in here, right? And they go, okay. And I said, and you've been coming to class? And they say, yeah. And I say, and some of the stuff that I've told you, it's been useful, right? And they go, yeah. Classes are great. And I say, fine, and your coursework is good, your grades are good. Yeah, And I say, so who let the bogeyman in? Who what's happened? Oh, well, it's all too much. And I say, stop. You need to park the bus. You need to turn your brain off. And I quite often tell them the story about Johnny Cash. Johnny Cash, as you know, was one of the world's most prolific performing artists. And he had hit record after hit record throughout a career that spanned, I think, 7 decades. You might need to fact check that one. And he talked in his autobiography about the pressure the record label would put on him to come up with another hit. And Johnny Cash said, whenever I needed to make a hit record, I went for a long walk. And he turned his brain off. And that's the first thing that I tell these students. And I often do an exercise with them to say, right, what I want you to do is, you can do this in private, last week we did it as a class, which was fantastic, because you could see a few of them going, what's this guy doing? And then they got the point. I said, I want you to clear your minds of every thought. Clear your mind. It's not an easy thing to do, but just clear your mind. And then when I say so, close your eyes. And when the first thought pops into your head, I want you to put your hand up. Do it silently with your eyes closed so nobody else knows what's happening. And it only takes a few seconds for the first person to say, I've had an intrusive thought. And I said, okay, so that's the thing you need to work on. Practice makes perfect, as we all know. And I've been doing it 5 years now. It's a form of meditation, I guess, but clearing your mind and just listening to your breath is the single most calming thing you can do. And when you are a postgrad student that is weeks from completing your studies and you're completely stressed out, and the thing is, you can't tell them they're being silly. That's counterproductive. Pull yourself together. That's silly. That's not helpful advice. You have to tell them to be curious and say, well, why do you think this is happening? Because you're a successful student and everything's going to be okay. Everything is going to be okay, I promise you, because you've got such a long track record of success behind you. It's almost silly. I don't use that word, of course. It's nonsensical. It's crazy to start thinking that thanks to no other outside influence, you're suddenly driving along this road and you're going to turn and crash into a lamppost. It's not going to happen. It's statistically more likely that you're going to succeed than fail. So that's point number one. Everything's going to be okay. The other thing you need to consider is you are surrounded by an environment, a built environment that's been running for 200 plus years that is designed specifically to support you. You've got libraries, you've got tutors, you've got classrooms, you've got colleagues, you've got a peer group. Everything around you is here for your support. So again, statistically, it's more likely that you're going to succeed. And what I always do is I finish up with the advice that I give my kids. It's the advice I never got as a younger man. But do what makes you happy, because that's genuinely my philosophy. I think we're here to be happy. And I think that if you spend your life in pursuit of the occupation, the activities that make you happy, you're going to be better at it. And if you're better at something, more success will come. And whatever that success looks like, I'm not saying it's, money and fancy cars and big houses. It's just happiness. And if you can sit and feel contented by what you're doing, rather than dragging yourself out of bed and going to a shift of 8 hours where you just suck it up, that's what you want. So let's get through this challenging period. And it's challenging because it's designed to be challenging. Again, it goes back to the thing I tell my students: take a look around. We don't let anyone in. There's levels here. You've come to be challenged. And this is what challenge feels like. If it was easy, everybody would be doing it and it wouldn't be worth it. So you've set yourself a challenge. The only task now is to get through it. Then you can do a bit of reflection. And you could say, well, that sucked. I don't want to do that ever again. So don't do it again. And so, yeah, that's how I finished my year with the students. So it's a bit of a tradition. And
but those were 3 lessons. What's the other 2?
The other 2 were...
There was everything's going to be okay.
Everything's going to be okay.
There is a framework around you to support you.
Yeah, that's a kind of subset of the everything's going to be okay.
And do what makes you happy.
That's the last one. And then the 3 in between are... okay, so you're not your mind. There is only now. And managed by fact. So we'll go through those 3 if you like.
Okay.
So there is only now. That's the be present lesson that we've talked about before, right? Nothing ever happened in the past.
Yeah.
Nothing's going to happen in the future. And if you're worrying about something that may or may not happen in the future, you're just going to worry about it twice.
Yeah.
So it's just that's an easy lesson, I think. Just do now. And also be sensible about the choices you make now. Like if you're, especially to those students I'm speaking to, the only thing you need to worry about is what you're doing now. And usually what you're doing now is make smart choices. Don't lie on the couch all day eating Doritos. Read a book. Go to the library. Just you know what the right thing is to do. So just do that. But don't worry about what you're not doing, right? This is where you get the problem with the overwhelm, right? This is where I think this is where you see the students crash the car. They're succeeding all the way and then they suddenly swerve and hit the lamppost because the overwhelm. And you say, well, you can only be doing one thing at a time. and you can only do that now. So do that now, and then do the next thing. So there's only now. The manage by fact part is that's the thing I spoke about earlier that comes from my friend Eddie.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So don't...
Unless you know it to be a fact.
Unless you know the bogeyman is coming, there's no need to sit in the corner of the room with the tinfoil hat on, okay? It's don't... And specifically, how that translates into the here and now of your daily life. It's about don't let the opinions of others or bias or poor judgment affect you. Easy to say, harder to do, but managed by fact. So to that frazzled student that's having a breakdown, I'm saying manage by fact. You are a successful student. You're at the pointy end of a postgraduate qualification, right? Your life has been a success up until now. Statistically, it's just not likely that you're going to crash the car. So don't. Breathe. Go for a walk. And then what ones did we cover there? Managed by fact. You're not your mind. This is
No, you're not your mind was before.
It was the first one. There is only now. Manage by fact. Be happy. Do what makes you happy.
And don't worry. Everything's
going to be okay. That is an extremely personal piece of advice. And I remember, it comes from the heart, because I remember when I was a younger man and I would worry. I was in exactly the same. Sometimes when I'm talking to these students and they're at a point of crisis, I see myself, or maybe it could be my daughters or something, and I remember being back in the moment where something was a disaster and I was terribly upset by it and felt like I didn't have the mechanisms to cope. Yet here we are. The sun came up the next day, and I remember being so frustrated by people that would give me that advice, everything's going to be okay. And you're like, you don't know that. You don't know that for certain. How can you be so blindly optimistic? How can you have so much faith? What's the alternative? We just all throw our hands in the air and say, okay, yeah, that's it. The ship has sunk. The car has crashed. Every man for themselves, jump overboard. The sun's coming up tomorrow. And it's the kind of wisdom that can only really come with age and experience and faith. That's the only one of the 5 that I say, just please accept that. It's going to be okay. I had a student a few weeks ago who forgot to hand in a piece of coursework.
Okay, so that's an automatic points.
It's not good.
Away.
It's not good. And it was a genuine mistake, and I have no doubts. I know the student well. She makes a great contribution in class. It's so out of character, and when the error was discovered, her reaction was so genuine. No one had any doubt, but nevertheless, managed by fact. It's a no. You've got to turn in your work, right? And she thought this was a disaster. This is it, game over. And I said, well, I can absolutely tell you for certain that there are many more students before you that have failed to hand in much more than you've missed one, and it's going to be okay. And I remember her looking at me just going, how do you know it's going to be okay? I said, because this is not the end. We are not going to be visiting your graveside next week saying, here lies the student. Did you hear about this student? Yeah, she forgot to hand in this piece of coursework. And so what happened? Oh, we killed her. Yeah, that's it. Game over. That doesn't happen. But it was a classic case of, in that moment, just forgetting to manage by fact. And the next bit of advice is, it's going to be okay. not pretending that it's great. I mean, no one's celebrating the fact that you forgot to hand in your bit of homework. But I mean, look at. I was reading the news this morning, and I was reading about the Artemis 2 splashdown. What a fantastic endeavour! After 50 years, we returned to space travel, and I was reading some of the details about the final stages of the journey. It wasn't all perfect. There were some issues that they had, but they managed them, and there was a splashdown, and all the astronauts are home alive and safe. And if you think about a project like that, to send a manned spacecraft around the moon and back to Earth, that's got to be one of the most complex projects mankind is capable of, right? There's a lot to it. And yet you can still have lots of things that go wrong and not affect the overall outcome. It's a bump in the road. Yeah, sure, you can have terminal issues, but...
You know, on that front, you made me think about it earlier, and funnily enough, you did the... I thought you were going to say it because you said that they crashed the car. There is this idea that, what you focus on expands in your mind, right? Like,
yes.
Attention energizes, intention transforms. That's a quote
Yes.
that I resonate with. And there is apparently this thing that if you're driving a car, a sports car on a loop or whatever,
Yes.
if you get into a spin or whatever, where you point your direction, that's likely where you're gonna hit. So there can be only one tree in the whole of the field, but if you fixate on not hitting the tree, you're much more likely to hit that tree. And in the same way, when we focus on, the problem,
Yes.
we're basically giving it more and more energy and
Yes.
aligning the whatever universe and life, our attitude towards that, right? So the whole fear mongering about not passing an exam might be exactly what will be the statistical error of you not passing the exam.
Yeah, correct.
Because you convinced yourself you're not going to do it.
Yeah.
And you do.
I read once that if you need to remember something, the best way is to remember it by saying, I must remember. You don't say, don't forget, don't forget, don't forget. Because the doing word is the thing you're more likely to do.
Yeah, I see. That's really interesting. That's interesting, and I don't have a proof for that. That's just what I've been taught. During we participate in workshops about
Yes.
spirit, let's say, whatever. Apparently, our subconscious mind, and so supposedly the universe, does not recognize negation. So if you say do not do that, for the subconscious mind, that actually is do that, because there's no. So there is no darkness, there is just lack of light.
Yes.
In the same way, if you focus on fear of something not happening,
Yes.
you're giving power to that which is,
Yes.
because there's no nothing. If there was nothing, then there wouldn't be something.
Yes,
You know what I mean?
correct. Yeah, it's the same thing. It's absolutely the same thing. So, and I guess that's a lovely way of articulating the basic advice that I'm giving these students. And the only other thing I wanted to say about that was, I've been doing this 5 years now, in this particular setting, and as I said, it's a bit of a tradition. And I always have a moment of self-doubt, because it is a bit of a, what do they say, a left field kind of subject to be talking about.
It's probably not in line with people's expectations.
It's certainly not mentioned on the curriculum,
Yeah.
let's put it that way, right? But it's the last half hour of the last lesson, and usually the attendance isn't that high by that stage in the semester, so you get a bit of latitude. And
You get all to be honest, that's the best audience, because those are the guys that actually want to be there, right?
I had a wonderful, I'm going to interrupt myself and just tell you a little story about that. I had a wonderful exchange with one of the students who said, I think the lesson was the Tuesday before Easter, and she had a distance to fly home for Easter, and she said, I want to tell you this conversation I had with my father. And I said, okay. And he was booking my flights to go home, and he said, what about this date? And she said, no, I can't fly home that day because that's my last lesson with Alistair, and I must be there for that. So you're right.
So they know about it. It's a thing.
Well, I don't think she knew in advance, unless the students talk about it among themselves. But I don't really know because
I see. Yeah. But she just wanted to be there.
She just wanted to be there, and I thought that's possibly the greatest compliment I've ever been paid as a teacher. So yeah, this is the final lesson, and as I said, I have my doubts because I think, this is a bit left field, and I always introduce it and I say, okay, so now we're going to do a thing, it's a bit of a tradition, and they go, okay, fine, and they're used to me enough, I think, after 12 weeks that it's not a shock. This guy's going to talk about something slightly left field, because we do other crazy things in class, or let's not say crazy, let's say non-traditional forms of learning.
Sure.
And despite the doubts that I have, I don't know how many more years I'll be doing it, but I can guarantee I'll always doubt myself before I go into the final class. But it always happens that every year at least one student will either say to me privately on the way out or will message me afterwards, I needed to hear that today, thank you very much. And I'm having an issue, and that spoke to me, and then I'm happy for the rest of the day because I know that okay, maybe 12 people heard it and only one needed it, but that one, I've helped that one person that day, because it's just brought a moment of calm to someone who needs just a moment of calm, just a little bit of a time out, and say it's going to be okay. You just wait. It's going to be okay.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. If anything, I wish I had obviously I had a private class, but I wish I had the classes with you. I was in a different.
You can come next year. I'll let you know when.
I don't want to interrupt people's vibe. They're like, come on, I'm just a random.
You can stand at the back. No one will notice.
Who's that man at the back? No, but that's a. I think it's a beautiful gift to give to people that, as you said, it's kind of like your how to be human lesson without having to reconstruct the whole education system.
Yeah, I mean, I'm reaching about 15 students a year, so over the course of my career, I'm making a small change. I would like to do more of it, but
that beats the hell out of zero still.
Yes. Yes, I suppose. Yeah. Anything's better than zero.
Well, I kind of feel that this was a really good composure, but I do have one final question for you.
Sure.
Which is the usual one, and you've explored many topics, so it's up to you where you want to take this. But always with my guests, I invite them at the very end to maybe share a certain thought that they've been using. Obviously you shared it with us your life philosophy, so that's probably a bit of an understatement there to be a thought. Maybe some sort of resource or sources or tools that might be beneficial to people. Maybe something that you've genuinely maybe you want to say hi to your wife, whatever it is.
I think that a lot of my philosophies have been informed by listening to people, whether it's been someone I've had the pleasure of working with, whether it's been a book I've read, whether it's been a situation I've been in that's been the catalyst for change, whatever it is, the important part of it has been to listen. And I think that is the a pinning philosophy. You have to continue to listen in life. I think there's a lot of people get to a certain stage in their life and they go, okay, I know enough. I'm closing my ears metaphorically to, you can't tell me that. I know this. And whenever I hear somebody using language like that, I think, okay, that's a closed mind. That's someone that's not listening anymore. I think that would be my parting shot, would be to say, never stop listening. Even if it's just to reaffirm that which you already know, but to listen is to challenge and to learn. So yeah, never stop listening would be my parting closing thought for the day.
Thank you. Now, what I've observed in general across our topics is that there is an underlying theme of being curious.
Yes.
Because to listen to someone truly, you have to be curious to hear what they have to say. Otherwise, you don't mean listen in a sense of just switch off, let them do their say, and then to actually listen. And that's huge. I think the world would be a much better place if people were more curious to hear the other person's perspective. Jump.
I mean, as part of the subject matter that I teach as well, we talk about communications models.
Oh, yeah.
And we talk about the way that things are encoded and received and decoded. And the thing is you can listen as hard as you want, and you're never going to be 100% certain that you've heard what the person has been trying to say. There's so many layers of code and interference that at the end of the day you can just trust your instincts. That's all you can do. But none of that will happen without the listening in advance.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining me, Alistair. Guys, I thank you so much for tuning in, for listening, and for watching. And I don't know, I'll have a discussion with Alistair if there are any books that he would suggest, because I might just write them underneath as I usually do, as a link, resource links. And other than that, make sure to like, subscribe, whatever, it helps, and have a wonderful week.